Oh, sorry, just drinking a little bit of my Soylent Green. Let's get on with it. Hello, interwebs! I hope you are all doing well because I am here to review the latest episode of Pluribus. This one, episode 6, HDP, which is a very fun title once you know what it actually means. But to start off, quite frankly, I think this is by far the best episode of this show for me. I have been loving this show overall, and certainly there have been some really amazing human moments throughout the series. I think the biggest one up until this point had been when Carol had her breakdown when she was on the truth serum earlier on in the season. But this episode legitimately brought me to tears. Like when Carol, without getting into the plot just yet, when Carol is sitting in that bathroom and she is crying, I was right there with her. And it probably is bolstered by the fact that I received some kind of sad personal news today. Don't worry, I personally am fine, and that's where I'll leave it. So I was a little bit primed for this episode, I will say. But this one just really, really hit me. And I just liked that this episode, again, kind of does what this show does really well, which is delve into a well-worn science fiction trope and turns it on its head in a way that makes it seem, if not positive, at least more understandable. And in one of the most surprising ways possible. And I just really, really loved it. This was, hands down, fantastic. And just has me excited as we're getting into what I believe is the last 2 episodes of the season, last 3, I forget how many exactly there are. There's 2 or 3 more. So as we head into the latter half, or latter part, I should say, of the season, I think we're in a really, really interesting place after this episode. But let's actually get into it. I love, we start off the episode with, Carol in this, very action-heavy moment, when she bursts out of the door from that, still first shot. I, again, love the cinematography. It's this stillness, this quietness, and then she just bursts through, and there's this energy and propulsiveness that she's going on, she's on a mission, oh my god, I've uncovered this great conspiracy. It's very much that, Soylent Green energy as she reveals what most of us suspected, which is that the entity, collective, whatever, the world, I guess we'll call them, has been, the hive mind, has been eating people. What I did not expect was the fact that they were shrink wrapped and how orderly it was, and they were cut up, and we got a little literal head at one point. So that was a unique visual twist, other than just being bodies laying out there. So I like that just visually. But we get this very propulsive energy, and it again has that Soylent Green, she's uncovered the conspiracy. This will be the thing that breaks it all down. She's gonna reveal this to everybody, and everyone will be oh my god, that's the worst thing. And I knew that was not gonna be where this show goes. But what they ended up doing, I think, was rather surprising. But Carol, and I like also that when she, goes to her house, we get these moments where, she's considering, sending the video in the mail, and then she's no, can't do that, because the hive mind will see it. So I've gotta, go to see people. And then when she goes back into her house to, clean up the evidence in case the hive mind comes in. Just small stuff like that. That's what I love this show for, and what I love Vince Gilligan, as a creator for. He really just has an attention to detail in his show. Again, I've talked about this before, and I know other writers write the show, so I'm not sort of sidelining the other writers that make up these episodes, but there's in all of his shows, there's just this attention to process of the minutia of stuff. And so we're going into, Carol, cleaning up after herself, and get that moment just makes everything feel more human, and grounded in a really oddly beautiful way on these everyday moments that the show focuses on in such a heightened scenario. I adore it, and it keeps coming up, even when later on when Carol picks up the phone and we have to listen with Carol for the entire message every damn time, even in this episode, and just her impatience at that. It's just, there's just something every day about that in this heightened scenario that just makes it feel very real and visceral, and I love that. But again, propulsive energy, she goes, we get to Vegas, and we get, and I apologize, I am going to mispronounce the hell out of his name. He's Ibate, I believe is how you say his name. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. But Ibate is basically having the hive mind cosplay James Bond, literally with the eye patch over his eye, with his enemy. Was really, really cute, but it led me to so many interesting questions, right? Because I've done some, not cosplay, LARPing, essentially. It's LARPing as James Bond, not cosplaying. Cosplaying and doing a LARP. And I've done LARPs before, and what's interesting to me about LARPs, what I love LARPs, is that we are all part of a group together. And for those of you who don't know, it's live action role play is what LARPing is, basically playing a video game in real life. And everyone in the LARP is doing their own thing. But this situation is all done for Ibate's amusement. And I don't know, there's just something about that feels a little hollow to me. And this gets into something that I just like the show sort of bringing up as questioning, because, again, I've talked about this before. What I like about this show, and as we'll get to in just a second with the next piece of this episode, is that the show is actually very... is trying to show the good of a hive mind. Like, a hive mind is not, like, we depict hive minds as just automatically villainous. We assume they're evil. And yet, the hive mind here is not a bad person, if we're going to overextend the word person to apply to the hive mind in totality. It's not a bad person. It may want bad things in terms of overriding people's consent, at least having desire to do that to create itself earlier on in the season, but it's not a bad person. And it raises us questions within the show about, like, whether or not this, like, collectivity in a hive mind is ultimately a good or a bad or negative, and is compared to something like American exceptionalism and individualism that Carol sometimes embodies in the show, especially earlier on in the series. But, and so I like that that's a conversation. But here within this moment, I'm just like, if it's all just for his amusement, Ibate's amusement, it just feels like a very hollow thing, an empty thing. But we also get hints that, like, Ibate feels love for the hive mind. He says, my loves. Whether or not he actually feels that, I feel like he does, considering the tenderness he expresses later on the episode towards Carol and towards the hive mind as well. And so, like, he does have a reciprocal relationship. And so it's, like, part of having fun with each other. I don't know, there's just something very fascinating in this dynamic of, like, they're only doing it for his amusement, and they're not, like, maybe they're having fun? I don't know, like, that's what I'm kind of curious about with the hive mind. Are they actually enjoying their time with Ibate? Are they, or is it just something they're doing? I mean, obviously they have this unending love for Ibate and every single, like, individual person as they express, but are they enjoying things? And again, it gets back to this question of, like, can they create, or are they just static? And I think that comes up into the next element where Carol comes up, and again, she's in a huff, and I love it. She's like, oh my god, I'm going to crack this open, and talks to Ibate, and Abate's like, yeah, we already know they eat humans. And we get this brilliant cameo by John Cena. It was amazing. Love it. The man is just on a roll with his career, isn't he? So just loved seeing him pop up here and basically giving an explanation to Carol about why they eat humans. And it's a very reasonable argument, right? Like, they can't kill anything, even plants, which I found particularly interesting. But they can't even kill anything, so they're just eating what they can, which human people dying are that. And that's interesting to me. I mean, last week when I reviewed the episode, my big question was, you know, are they going to start farming people? Like, my thought was, like, maybe they needed to eat people to sort of make sure they all stayed in the hive mind, in terms of, like, maybe they needed, like, human protein to make sure that whatever kept them in the hive mind, like, the living people in the hive mind stayed in them or something like that. So maybe they would, like, start making babies just to, like, harvest them for food. But no, that's not even that sinister. It's literally, like, they... Like, even the argument I just expressed, I would have been like, okay, there's a reasonable argument for that. But this is even less sinister than that, which is that, like, they're just eating bodies of people that are already dead. Like, it's wasting absolutely nothing. And, frankly, I find that entirely reasonable. And it raises these other questions of, like, how much we, as beings, living beings, require harming something to get to live. Like, even vegetarians, you know, there has been some studies that, like, they don't feel pain the exact same way, but plants feel pain in some way. So even if you're a vegetarian, there's still, like, you're eating another living being. Now, that's not a knock against vegetarians or vegans or anything like that. I certainly understand. I myself am not, but I 100% understand a lot of the reasons why people are vegan. Again, look at the cruelty of our animal system and how we make animals. So 100% not knocking that. But, like, you are, as a vegan, still eating a living being, arguably. And so it just points to like how much like life is about some level of eating other people and consuming others and extracting resource out of other life. And that is just very, very interesting, of like how much the collective, the hive mind is just giving to other people. And I jumping on the other side of this, we have Carol's response to this, and even learning that like she's been cut out of all the other individuals who are meeting regularly outside of the Paraguayan guy, who we'll talk about in a second. And that breakdown that she gets, I think, was about that. Like, you could argue her breakdown, and probably it is about all of it, but her breakdown being like, oh, they knew and they didn't tell me. But I think it's like just the fact that she is so isolated. And again, it gets to this very good point that the show is, I think, trying to articulate, of like how individual, like, Carol tries to hold herself. Like, I can do this alone. I'm going to discover this thing. I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to prove that I'm right to everyone else. I'm getting it. I'm smarter. I'm going to make these big speeches about individualism that she gives. Like, she has this sense of, like, superiority to a degree. And like, I'm an independent person, like we saw with the Sprout scene earlier on the season, where it's like, I'm an independent person bringing back my groceries, and we see all the people who come in to service her, the workers, the working class people that come in to service her every day to get her food every single day, and she's not even conscious and aware of it, of like how much she does depend on other people, how much she does depend on community. And this is ultimately that final moment of like, the hive mind has abandoned her, everyone else has chosen for the most part to abandon her, and she is absolutely alone. And you can't do that. Humans are social animals. And so there's this argument around like, yes, the community and connectivity that the hive mind represents is ultimately the ultimate form of that point. But again, the show also drags out some problems with the hive mind as well. Like, they literally cannot hurt anyone else. And Carol has a good point, like, eat a fucking apple, you know? Pick up a fucking apple. And, you know, she's an asshole about it, but there is some level of conversation here. And so we're getting these full extremes. And what I really love about the show, and I've talked about it elsewhere, is just how this show is such a good discussion on navigating community versus individual through a character like Carol, who embodies, in many ways, this like American exceptional individualism ideal. She's been indoctrinated in it, but she's also queer to it. And when I say queer, I don't mean like queer literally. She is a lesbian woman. But she's also like pushed out from that. She's feels isolated throughout her whole life because she is different, because of what she writes, because of being lesbian, from having to be in conversion therapy. Like, there's these really interesting conversations around how she has been treated by the hegemony, by the American culture, that has harmed her, that has made her this way, and why she is very rightfully resentful and suspicious of a hegemonizing force like the hive mind. And that's, I think, equally valid in some senses, even though Carol's going about it in this American individualism, asshole-ish, exceptionalism kind of way. And so I like this breakdown here of like how isolated Carol is, because it's the ultimate point of like, she's alone. And that's hard. And we also get that moment later on where where Carol like sees that Ibate doesn't really want her around. He's like, yeah, I'll call me whenever, I'll be here for you, but he doesn't want her staying nearby. And she realizes that. And she's like, all right, I'll go. And she does that for herself. And she's used to that. She clocks it and then says, oh, I'm just kidding. And you get the sense that she's used to that. Like, she wants connection, but she's not willing to ask for it or to change herself, really, even for it. And I think that that's profoundly sad. And yet, you see where it's coming from in her. It's so well done. And then that moment where we learn that they can't change them. And they figured out a way to do it, but they need to get their consent to be able to do it, and Carol chooses not to. I am curious to see if any of the other 12 are choosing not to. If any, or would choose to. If any of the other 12 will choose to join the hive mind. I am curious. I'm sure at least one of them will. Oh, and also, too, speaking of that American exceptionalism idea, I do like that there's the call out here by Ibate saying, like, the people who are Spanish, or non-English speakers, were offended that you didn't invite them. Because, yeah, she didn't. And I get you understand the reasoning of, like, she didn't want the hive mind in the room and didn't want to trust a translator. but it was still a dickish thing and very American-centric thing for her to have done. So, yeah, I think that is an interesting point. Anyways, back to the consent angle of this. Like, they're going to have to consent. And I think that's a very interesting place. Because now, and you can even see it in Rey's performance of, like, the relief of, like, oh, they will not change me now. I'm safe. And you see that sense of relief that comes on her. And I really find that interesting, because now it's like, okay, there's no pressure for her to, like, defend her own safety. So it just goes down to arguments of, like, what's better for the world, this eternal peace, but unchanging and non-constructive, and in some ways just decay, because it's not willing to extract anything from anyone else, not harm anything else to save itself. And I think that's, I don't know, it's just so fascinating to me, because you have to, it's this argument that, like, yeah, there's eternal peace, but if it's eternal peace, then nothing changes. And that's just a slow way to die when nothing changes. And so is there requirement on some level of conflict and tension? And I think ultimately my argument has always been in real life is like, yes, we should want a culture of tension, of dealing with conflict. The problem is when that conflict is when we should be able to try to navigate conflict. It's why I love Star Trek so much, right? Like, Star Trek is not a perfect utopia, as many people like to say it is. It's a world where there are still conflicts, but they try to work it out without violence and trying to hurt each other. So there is tension, conflict, and we need to learn how to navigate that. But it's not about, like, harming each other. And we should want a world where it's not conflict-free, but a world where we navigate conflict in ways that's equitable as best we can. So I found that to be just a fascinating place that this show has set itself up to have a conversation around. And I really, really love that. We end the episode, though, on our Paraguayan guy who has discovered the alien signal. So we get a reaffirmation that the alien stuff is going to be dealt with in the show, which I'm curious about. I'm really ultimately curious how the greater cosmos of this all is going to tie back into it. My argument, again, I've said this before, my bet is going to be, just as a predictive, is that there's an alien hive mind that is going to come to try to subsume the human hive mind. And by the time the alien hive mind arrives, Carol will have convinced people enough to be like, hey, I don't hate the hive mind, but we don't want the human hive mind to become part of the alien hive mind, because then we would lose any type of humanity there is. We would all just be subsumed in the greater hive mind. There would be no human culture at all. So I think that'll be an interesting sort of navigation as the show goes on. So that's my guess on that point. But the Paraguayan guy gets Carol's message and is inspired by it, and he goes out. And he's like, fuck the hive mind. His mom even shows up, stepping out of the shadows, like, hive mind, if you're trying to convince someone that you're not evil, don't maybe stand in the shadows, you know? Stand in a nice light lit area when you say something to them. Because you look menacing as fuck. And creepy as fuck. But yeah, obviously he is inspired to go and see Carol. So like that. I think my only knock on this part, and I'm curious to see how his interaction with the Carol is going to go, because he is also someone who's like super independent, but less American focused. So I'm curious to see how he's going to interact with Carol. My only knock against this section is it's still Vince Gilligan using the yellow tint for Hispanic set countries. It's an American thing, but like Breaking Bad was one of the biggest offenders of it back in the day, where like anytime we were in Mexico, it was like super piss colored, super yellow colored filter, and it's not as bad on this section. We still get a little bit of it in the Paraguay section, so that's my only real knock against it. Wasn't as bad as like Amelia fucking Perez. But it was there. That's my only small thing. Otherwise, fantastic episode. Probably my favorite episode of the show. I am very excited to see we're going to get into the back half of the season and into season 2, which it's already been renewed for, so phenomenal, love it, and I will see what you all think down in the comments below. Beyond all that, I hope you, my friends, live long and prosper.